World of Warcraft has always had a strange ability to hide people in plain sight. You can spend months, sometimes years, seeing the same character names in guild chat, raids, battlegrounds, or late night conversations that go on far longer than the actual game. You know their class, their transmog, their sense of humour. But once they log off, you may know nothing about the life they go back to. The Remarkable Life of Ibelin is about that gap. It tells the story of Mats Steen, a young man from Norway who lived with Duchenne muscular dystrophy and played World of Warcraft as Ibelin. His family knew that Azeroth was a huge part of his life, but it was only after Mats died that they began to understand what the time online had truly meant. Messages started arriving from people they had never met, friends from World of Warcraft, people who did not just know Evelyn as another player standing around in Stormwind or someone they had grouped with a few times. They knew him as a friend, someone they trusted, someone who made them laugh, supported them, and became part of their lives. Through those messages, Matt's family discovered there had been this entire side of him they had never seen fully while he was alive. Not a fake life, not somebody simply wasting time behind a screen. A real life filled with friendship, memories, arguments, trust, jokes, heartbreak, support, and people who genuinely cared about him. And that is what should stay with every WoW player after watching it, because the character you see struggling in your dungeon is never the full story. You do not know what their day has been like before they logged on. You do not know whether they are lonely, exhausted after work, grieving, dealing with an illness, anxious about joining groups, or simply trying to learn without being made to feel stupid. Maybe they are just having a bad run. We've all had them. A missed interrupt, a bad pull, standing in something obvious because your brain has switched off for half a second. None of it means that person deserves to be treated like they are worthless. Yet that is exactly how quickly people can turn on each other in this game. One mistake and somebody is told to uninstall. One wipe and chat becomes a place for strangers to show how clever they are by making somebody feel small. The person typing it might forget 10 minutes later. The person receiving it might not. And after watching Evelyn's story, I do not think any of us should be quite so quick to forget that there is a real person behind every character name. Because that is what toxicity relies on, really: distance. It relies on the fact you cannot see the person reading what you have written. You cannot see their face. You cannot hear whether they have gone quiet. You do not have to sit in the awkward silence after and realize you have just made somebody feel awful over a game. All you see is a health bar, a character model, a low number on details, or someone standing in the wrong place at the wrong time. It becomes easy to think they are ruining my run. And fair enough, there are runs that generally get ruined. The group might not be ready for the content. Someone may not have done the preparation they needed to do. You may have to explain the same mechanic 3 times and nothing changes. Nobody is saying you have to act like that is enjoyable. You are allowed to leave. You are allowed to be frustrated, and you are allowed to say this is not working. But there is a massive difference between wanting a better run and wanting somebody else to feel small. Watch that mechanic next time is not the same as, are you blind? We need interrupts on that cast is not the same as uninstall. One of those responses gives people a chance to learn. The other just gives an annoyed stranger somewhere to throw their bad mood. And people call it banter far too often. It's only a joke. People are too sensitive. But banter is not one person tearing into somebody who's already embarrassed. Banter works when both people are laughing. It stops being banter when the second somebody is made to feel unwelcome, stupid, or like they have to defend their existence in the game. The same goes for competition. Being competitive does not mean being cruel. Wanting to time a key does not require you to talk down to people. Wanting your raid to improve does not require you to humiliate the person who made a mistake. You can have standards without acting as though someone who is worse than you is somehow less deserving of respect. Being good at World of Warcraft is not a moral achievement. You are not a better person because your damage is higher. You are not more important because you know every route, every mechanic, every cooldown, and every bit of the current meta. You have simply spent more time learning that side of the game. That is it. There will always be somebody playing at a level above you. There will always be someone who can look at your mistakes and decide you are the bad player in the group. But most people seem to forget that once they find someone else to blame. What makes this worse is that WoW is not like a quick match in a game you forget about 5 minutes later. People build whole pieces of their life around this world. They come back to it after years away because a certain zone, a certain soundtrack, or a certain city reminds them of a time in their life they miss. They remember old guilds more vividly. They remember the first person who helped them with an elite quest when they were completely lost. They remember staying up late, talking to people they had technically never met. That is why people care so much about this game. It is not just the raids, the gear, or the expansion you happen to start in. It is what is happening in your life while you are playing it. Azeroth becomes tied to people. The friend who always logged in after work, the guild leader who gave you a chance when the gear was terrible, the random player who crafted something for you for free, the person who stayed in the group after everyone else had left because they did not want you to give up. Those moments last. Nobody remembers the perfect dungeon run nearly as much as they remember how somebody made them feel. That is why it's worth thinking about the opposite as well. A person can remember the run when they were laughed at for being new. They can remember the guild that made them feel like an outsider. And they can remember the first time they asked a question in chat and got mocked for not already knowing the answer. One nasty interaction might be nothing to the person giving it out. To the player on the other end, it can become the reason that they stop joining groups, stop speaking in guild chat, or quietly stop playing altogether. Not because they are weak, because nobody enjoys walking into a space where they expect to be embarrassed. And this is where Ibelin's story matters beyond just being a heartbreaking documentary. It does not mean every person you meet in WoW has some huge hidden tragedy behind them. That is not the point. You should not need to find out years later that somebody was dealing with something awful before you decide they deserved basic decency. The fact that you do not know should be enough. You do not know whether that quiet player has just had a horrible day at work. You do not know whether the person struggling in your group has been ill, is exhausted, is anxious, or has spent the last 10 minutes talking themselves into pressing the Q button because they have had a bad experience before. They could be a kid still learning. They could be someone older who does not react as quick as they used to. They could be playing with a disability you cannot see. Or they could just be bad at the game. Even then, so what? Not everyone is playing to push the highest key in the world. Not everybody watches guides before every dungeon. Not everyone wants to copy the exact same build, route, and talent setup as every other player. Because they are just trying to enjoy the game their own way. WoW has room for all of that. For the person who raids 3 nights a week. For the player leveling slowly because they like reading every quest. For the collector, the role player, the person who only logs in to fish, farm mounts, or wander around old zones after a bad day. Or for the player who wants to be brilliant. And the player who's never going to be brilliant, but still enjoys being there. The game gets smaller the moment people decide only one type of player deserves to belong. And I honestly think that is one of the reasons so many people talk about old WoW communities so warmly. It was not because everyone was better behaved back then. Anyone who remembers the Baron's chat knows that is not true. But there was more room to be a beginner, more room to ask for help, and more room for random encounters to turn into friendships. A lot of people learnt the game because someone took the time to explain something instead of instantly treating them like a burden. That is still possible now. A new player can have a completely different experience of the game depending on how the first few people treat them. Imagine being nervous about joining a dungeon, making one mistake, then being kicked with no explanation while chat tells you that you were useless. Then imagine the same mistake happening, but someone says, "No worries, just move out of that one next time. We've got this." Neither version costs anything. One can make someone log off feeling stupid, the other might be the reason they decide to keep playing. That is not an exaggeration. People remember kindness because it stands out. You probably do as well. Most of us can think of one random person from years ago who did something small that stuck with us. Maybe they gave you some gold when you first started. Maybe they helped you with a quest they did not need anything from. Maybe they invited you into a guild when you barely knew anyone. They probably have no idea you still remember that. That is the strange thing about online games. Someone can change the way you feel about an entire community without ever seeing your face or knowing your real name. Ibelin did that for people. That is what his friends were trying to tell his family after he died. He was there for them. He mattered. He had become part of their lives in a place that people outside gaming often dismiss too easily. His story proves something a lot of us already know, even if we have never really put it into words. The friendship, the memories, and the support is real. The impact you have on someone, whether it happens in a pub, at work, in a football team, or while standing outside the Stormwind Bank talking absolute nonsense to someone at 1 in the morning, that does not mean every online interaction is deep or meaningful. Some of them are, some of them aren't. You will still meet annoying people. You will still have groups that go badly. You will still get frustrated when someone repeatedly ignores mechanics and wastes people's time. But you have a choice in how you respond to that. Leave the group if you've had enough. Explain what went wrong if the person is willing to listen. Take a break if you can feel yourself getting angry. Just do not turn a bad run into a reason to make someone else feel awful. There is no prize for being the most toxic person in a dungeon. Nobody is impressed because you made a stranger feel stupid. And when people say it is only a game, they are usually right in one sense. It is only a game, which makes it even stranger that some people are willing to be horrible to each other over it. But in another sense, it is not only a game. It is where people have made real friends, found comfort, and held onto memories of people who are no longer here. For some, it is also one of the few places they get to feel confident, funny, wanted, useful, or properly understood. This is what Ibelin reminds us. Behind every character name is someone with a life you cannot see. They have had good days and bad ones. They have insecurities. They have people they care about, worries, memories, problems, hopes, and reasons for logging in that you will probably never know. The next time somebody messes up in your group, take a second before you type. Ask yourself whether what you're about to say makes the situation better. Ask yourself whether you are trying to help or whether you just wanted somebody else to feel bad because you are frustrated. There is a difference, a massive one. And sometimes the smallest bit of patience can mean more to somebody than you will ever realize. Do not forget Ibelin, not just Mats Steen, not just the documentary. Do not forget what his story says about all the people we meet in games and never truly know. Behind the character is a person. Treat them like one.